at Forrester, and it's buzzing. These conversations are being had, and these are legitimate questions of where the value is and how to take it forward.
And I guess the other thing that we'll get into in a lot more detail as we go is, at one point we would have said that the businesses are being bifurcated into the traditional hardware software business, but also they're moving into the cloud business. But it's more complex than even the cloud business. It's including any number of new business models and new delivery systems that they're trying to put systems in place to support. And they're so different from the historical model that they're actually either splitting the companies or running dedicated resources for those other models. They're functioning completely separately.
Yeah, let me give you some numbers. In emerging tech, IoT, AI, automation, 5G, blockchain, quantum computing, VR, AR, MR, 3D printing, whatever it is, these models, there's 800,000 companies today that we're watching. And in a lot of cases, that's hardware. They're moving products across oceans, and this product needs to be distributed. On the SaaS side of things, 10 years ago, we had 10,000 software companies. Today, we have 175,000. And I predicted 10 years from now, we have 1 million SaaS companies. So just there, when you said hardware, software, and now services, but when you start to break it up, we don't look at that anymore. We look at 26 categories with 250 categories below it. So you can't have a security software conversation today without breaking it up into the 7 layers of security and then 17 layers below that. So it is highly complex. Once you start multiplying 800,000 companies by 1 million, by 35 million customer conversations happening in the tech industry today, by then millions of partners that you see over my shoulder in a Venn diagram, at some point your calculator is going to kick out an error, because the permutations and combinations that we're talking about here are so far beyond. When I was at Lenovo or IBM, I had 12,000 SKUs that I had to distribute. And then I had to distribute that to 75,000 VARs, for example, in a certain region like the US. That was somewhat linear supply chain stuff. When you have to go into the trillions or more of permutations, now we're talking AI and automation. There's no linear human-based automation model that moves that level of orchestration. And that's one of the headwinds facing distribution, is that all of this different parts of what used to be a linear supply chain have blown up to be celestial, with trillions of moving planets and star systems and comets and moons and rotating around all these different galaxies and suns and things like that. And trying to orchestrate this massively decentralized market when you're not the tip of the spear is incredibly difficult.
Yeah, so we're actually jumping to the last point in your paper, which is great. And that point was no one can hide in the nonlinear ecosystem. And I had my own note on that because all of the conversation has been cloud everything for almost 10 years now. But what you've just told us, which makes all the sense in the world, is it's a completely nonlinear system, or it's moving toward a completely nonlinear system, which starts to look like the channel starts to look like a neural net of intersecting value propositions, all of which at some level are required to function together to deliver the complete solution. So, that's a huge shift in terms of the way distributors or software publishers and manufacturers have to look at the marketplace. Completely different. And I would assume there's really significant impacts in both. Again, I use the term manufacturer for software publishers as well. But whether you're a manufacturer, a software publisher, or a distributor, you've got to really radically change your existing go-to-market model in order to deal with that.
It is. And we know that 76% of CEOs today, in every business, in every industry, regardless of which way you're looking at it, think their current business model will be unrecognizable in 5 years. That's an Accenture piece of research. 76%. So we're seeing, in our world, radically shifting business models. You'll be asleep at the switch if you haven't seen Cisco and Dell and HPE and IBM and all the big companies from the client server era have gone all in subscription consumption. HPE is going to be there in a few months where you can't buy $1 million server anymore. It's $9,000 a month forever. Last week, Lenovo went all in. Nutanix. All the way down the list. This era, which was the distribution era, all that product had to move through, and the capital and credit and floor financing and all the things that needed to work with inventory, that's fading away given where these models are going. So this is just a radical shift that's happening everywhere. But the core threat here is, in that model of distribution where everything has to move through a linear phase. And that's the key. And you've got, new buyers, and the answer to all that complexity, by the way, if you want to simplify it all, is back to the buyer. So I mentioned there's 35 million kinds of tech buyers. It's broken down by the lines of business who make 65% of cloud, SaaS decisions today. 2/3 happen outside of IT. The head of marketing in many companies spends more money on technology than the head of technology. Second, we talked about sub-industries. No one's a healthcare expert anymore. You're an expert at a 50-doctor clinic. You're an expert at a dentist office. You're an expert at a small hospital. There's 12 sub-industries behind the 27 major industries. There's 297 sub-industries of expertise in the channel. There's the geographic differences that we talked about before, 197 different countries. You've got the different segment and sector. If you're an SMB player, SMB has 6 categories inside of it. You can't compare a 9-person company with a 49 with a 499. There's no comparison. And there's different channels that wrap around all 3. And then finally, 250 layers of a tech stack. I can't even find a security company that can handle all 7 layers of security, from physical to network to web to data to endpoint. I can't find malware to ransomware to email. I can't find a company that has the broad skills to do that. So everything sits in a stack. So if you think of those 35 million conversations, a mid-sized clinic in upstate New York, a marketing buyer, those millions of permutations quickly come down to 50 companies in Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse, and Albany that wrap around or potentially wrap around those 28 digital moments that marketing buyer walks through before making a decision.
It's interesting. It's interesting that you bring that up. And again, I wasn't going to talk about this, but you're really triggering a personal experience. When we were operating our company at MTC, we wanted to get IT outsourced support. So, we were basically running a 1 or a 2-person shop in a 25 to 30-person company. And those 2 people were running the full realm of IT services, from the most sophisticated to the most minimal. So we thought we'd supplement that with a managed service channel partner that was capable of augmenting everything we were doing. We couldn't find it. We continuously kept walking into organizations. They were all Windows centric. They didn't understand Linux. They didn't understand security. The sophistication of the people that they had was much more oriented towards desktop support than it was towards sophisticated IT systems. And so I think that echoes exactly what you're talking about, the tech stack. And that's a simple example, but the tech stack it flies off in a million directions. And assembling a coherent delivery system for all of that's got to be quite a challenge.